clamped over my mouth and forced my face into a pillow that smelled like damp feathers and stale soap. "You're not supposed to be here," a voice said, calm and close. I fought on instinct, legs kicking against a mattress that wasn't mine, but the hand stayed firm and heavy. My eyes opened to darkness broken by a thin strip of light under a door. I tasted dust when I tried to breathe through my nose. "We can't let him go," another voice said from the other side of the door. A woman this time, low and certain, like she'd already decided. The hand eased off my mouth just enough for air. It didn't leave my face. It stayed hovering, ready. "Listen," the first voice said. "Breathe. Stay quiet." I dragged in air and tasted metal again. My wrists burned. Something tight bit into them when I moved. Zip ties. My hands were behind my back. I twisted and the plastic cut deeper. "Please," I said, and my voice came out rough and too loud in the small room. "Where am I?" The hand returned, covering my mouth again. "Quiet," the voice said. "Noise makes everything worse." The door opened a few inches. Yellow hallway light spilled in, slicing the darkness. A tall man stood in the gap, shoulders filling it. He looked ordinary in a way that made my stomach lurch. Clean sweatshirt, jeans, hair combed, no mask, no weapon visible. He watched me for a long second, then spoke without raising his voice. "You walked onto our property," he said. "You saw something you shouldn't have seen." I shook my head hard against the pillow. "I didn't see anything," I said as soon as the hand lifted. "I got lost. I was walking. I'll leave. I won't come back." The man in the doorway didn't react to the promise. He looked past me, into the room. "That's no longer an option," he said. "You can't leave." The woman spoke again with a tired voice. "Mark, close the door. He needs to settle down." The door shut. The lock clicked. The strip of light vanished. Darkness returned, thick and close. I swallowed and tried to pull my hands forward. The zip ties held. "Who are you people?" I said. "What do you want?" The hand that had held me down belonged to a younger man, maybe late teens. I could see him now as my eyes adjusted. He sat on the floor beside the bed, back against the wall, knees pulled up, breathing through his nose like he was trying to stay calm. He didn't look at me. He stared at the door as if he expected it to open. "Don't make them come in," he said. "Just don't." My pulse thudded in my ribs. "Untie me," I said. "Please." He flinched at the word please like it hurt him. He still didn't look at me. "They'll do it later," he said, "when it's safe." "What do you mean by that?" He rubbed his face with both hands and let them fall to his knees. In the dark, I heard his fingernails scrape the skin like he'd been doing it too hard. "You shouldn't have come here," he said. "That's the whole thing." I tried to sit up. The mattress creaked. The younger man tensed immediately, shoulders rising. "Stay still," he said. "I'm serious." I froze, breathing shallow. The air felt warmer near the floor, colder near the ceiling, like the room had layers. The house creaked somewhere above us. Footsteps, slow, controlled. I heard voices again, just outside, muffled through the door. "If he talks, they come," the woman said. "And if they come, someone gets hurt," Mark answered. The younger man beside the bed whispered, barely audible. "It starts with a look," he said. "Then it turns into a problem." I stared into the dark, trying to find his face. "What starts?" I asked. The door handle moved. The younger man's breathing changed. Shorter, faster. He pressed his palms flat on the floor as if grounding himself. "No," he whispered. "No, no." The door opened. The woman stepped in. She carried a small flashlight, its beam aimed at the floor, not at my face. She looked like someone's mum, hair tied back, cardigan, bare feet on wood. Her eyes moved over me quickly, then to the zip ties. "Are you hurt?" she asked. I swallowed. The normal tone made my throat dry. Just let me go, I said. I won't tell anyone anything. Her mouth tightened, a small expression she tried to hide. I believe you, she said. That doesn't change anything. The man called Mark stepped in behind her. He looked at me like I was a problem that needs to be contained before it spreads. You saw the backfield, Mark said. You saw the shed. I saw a fence, I said. That's it. The woman's flashlight beam shifted slightly. It caught the younger man's hands on the floor. For half a second, the skin on his knuckles looked wrong. Too tight, too pale. The fingers seemed longer than they should have been, joints raised under the skin like stones. The woman snapped the beam away immediately. That's enough, she said, sharp now, then softer. Eli, keep your eyes down. The younger man dropped his head like he'd been hit. He squeezed his own hands together hard, as if trying to force them back into shape. My stomach turned. What is he? I whispered. Mark's voice came from behind the woman, flat and final. That, he said, is why you can't leave. They didn't answer my next question. They didn't need to. The way the woman stood between me and the younger man said enough. The way Mark kept his hands loose at his sides, ready, said enough. The woman stepped closer to the bed and lowered her voice. My name is Ruth, she said. You're in our house. You're going to stay calm. Untie me, I said. You can't do this. Mark leaned in, just enough for me to smell laundry detergent on him. You can't do anything, he said quietly. That's the difference. Ruth held up the flashlight again, beam still aimed low. You wandered in, she said. People do that sometimes. They ignore signs. They cut across fields. They get curious. I wasn't curious, I said. I was walking. I thought it was a public path. Mark's jaw tightened. It isn't, he said. Ruth continued, voice steady. This family has carried something for a long time, she said. It stays here. It stays quiet. It stays ours. Then call the police, I said, desperate. Tell them I trespassed. I'll take a fine. I'll leave. Mark gave a short sound that wasn't a laugh. And then they come here, he said. And then they see. Ruth looked down at my wrists. The flashlight beam drifted over the zip ties. We'll cut them when we can, she said. You keep pulling like that, you're going to split your skin. I stopped moving my hands. The plastic burned anyway. Eli sat on the floor, head down, shoulders shaking in small tremors. He pressed his palms into his own thighs like he was trying to hold himself in place. What is wrong with him? I asked. Ruth's voice stayed calm, but her eyes flicked toward Eli with a kind of fear she couldn't fully hide. It runs in our blood, she said. It has for generations. Mark stepped closer to the door and listened to the hall, as if timing mattered. I tried to keep my voice level, but it shook anyway. People are going to look for me, I said. My phone, my work, my friends. Mark turned back to me, and for the first time there was something like anger in his eyes. Then you should have stayed on the road, he said. Ruth held up a hand toward him. It was a small gesture, but it carried weight. Mark stopped speaking immediately. Ruth looked at me again. You want the truth? She asked. Yes, I said. The truth is simple, she replied. If you walk out of this house and tell someone what you saw, people will come back here. She paused, choosing words carefully. And when people come back here, someone gets hurt. I opened my mouth to argue, but a sound came from Eli that cut through it. A low, wet intake of breath that didn't sound human. It sounded like something trying to pull air through a throat that had changed shape. Ruth's eyes snapped to him. Eli, she said, keep your teeth together. Eli's shoulders rose and fell fast. He made a choking noise and pressed both fists into his mouth like he could physically hold it shut. Mark moved instantly. He stepped into the room and grabbed Eli by the back of the sweatshirt, hauling him up with controlled force. Eli stumbled, feet scraping wood. In the flashlight spill, I saw his hands again. The fingers looked longer now, The knuckles bulged. The nails were darker, thicker, shaped more like claws than nails. My stomach flipped. I tried to pull back on the bed. The zip ties cut deeper. Ruth switched the flashlight off completely. Darkness swallowed us. Her voice stayed even. Eyes closed, she said to me, "Do it." "I can't," I said, and it came out as a plea. Mark's voice, tight now. "Close them," he said, "right now." A loud crack sounded in the dark, like wood splitting. Then a scrape across the floor, fast and heavy. Eli made a sound that wasn't words, and it filled the room with panic. I shut my eyes, not out of obedience, out of reflex. Something moved close enough that I felt air shift against my face. A smell hit me, hot breath, wet, animal. Ruth spoke near my ear. "Breathe through your nose," she said. "Stay still." I tried. My chest shook. My ribs hurt. The mattress dipped beside me as weight settled on the bed. Too much weight. The springs groaned. A hand pressed into my shoulder. The fingers felt wrong, longer than a human hand. The tips dug in hard enough to bruise. My body stiffened. Fear ran through me in a hot wave. Mark's voice came from somewhere near the door. "Eli," he said, "hands off." The pressure on my shoulder increased for a second, as if the hand didn't want to let go. Then it lifted. The mattress rose slightly. Ruth's voice stayed calm, but it had a hard edge. "Eli," she said again. "Back." A scraping sound moved away from the bed. Heavy breathing followed it. Then a wet cough, like something clearing thick fluid from a throat. I kept my eyes shut until Ruth spoke again. "Open them," she said. I did. The room was dim again. Ruth had turned the flashlight back on, beam aimed low. Mark stood in front of Eli with his arms spread slightly, body positioned like a barrier. Eli stood hunched near the wall, shaking. His face was half lit and his mouth looked swollen, stretched, lips pulled too tight over teeth that seemed too many. His eyes were wide and glossy, tracking me with a focus that didn't belong to a human gaze. He swallowed hard, and his throat moved wrong. Too much movement under the skin. Ruth didn't look at his face. She looked at his chest, at his hands, at his posture, like a nurse checking signs. "It's passing," she said softly. Eli made a small sound that could have been a sob if his mouth could still shape it. Mark turned his head toward me, eyes flat again. "Now you understand," he said. My voice came out thin. "If anyone sees that," I said, "they'll bring people." Ruth nodded once. "They'll bring lights," she said. "They'll bring guns. They'll bring questions." Mark's jaw clenched. "And Eli will break free," he said. "And someone will die." Ruth stepped closer to me. Her face finally came into the edge of the flashlight beam. She looked tired, older than I'd guessed, like she hadn't slept right in years. "So," she said quietly, "we can't let you go." I stared at her, shaking. "What do you do with people like me?" I asked. Mark answered, simple and brutal. "We keep them," he said, "or we stop them." They left me alone after that, but the house never felt empty. Floors creaked above me. Water ran somewhere and stopped. A drawer opened and closed. Quiet routine, like they were living around something they already understood. Ruth came back with scissors and a glass of water. She set the water on the floor where I could see it and cut the zip ties carefully, keeping her body angled toward the door like she expected Eli to appear at any moment. "Drink," she said, slow. My wrists were raw. I flexed my hands and pain ran up my arms. The water tasted ordinary, which made everything else feel worse. "You're acting like this is normal," I said. "It's our normal," she said. "Sit up." Mark's voice came through the door, close. "People never keep quiet if we let them go." Ruth didn't argue. She didn't look toward him either. "We've heard every promise," she said. "We believed some. We learned." "You've done this before," I said. Ruth's eyes flicked up, then away. "It happened before I was born," she said. "Before my father was born." I stood and reached for the door, my hand hovering around the handle. Mark spoke through the wood. "If you touch that handle, you're choosing," he said. "Choose carefully." "I just want air," I said. "There's air," Ruth replied. "There's food. There's a bathroom down the hall. You will live." I pulled my hand back. My pulse thudded in my ears. "What is he?" I asked. "What are you?" Ruth exhaled, like the answer carried weight. "Human enough," she said, "until stress." "Until hunger," Mark added. Ruth didn't deny it. I paced the room. No window, no phone, no way to pretend this was temporary. When the door opened again, Ruth stepped in with a plate of food. "Eat," she said, slow. I waited until she was fully inside, until the door swung inward behind her. Then I moved. I shoved past her and hit the hallway barefoot. Mark was already there, halfway down the hall, as if he'd never left. "Stop," he said, and he didn't raise his voice. I ran anyway, toward a room with a window spilling moonlight. Hope surged hard enough to hurt. Eli slammed into me from the side. His body hit mine shoulder first, all weight and speed, like he'd lost control of where he was moving. The impact drove me into the wall. Wood cracked against my shoulder and pain flashed down my arm. My fingers went numb. I slid to the floor, gasping. Eli staggered a step away from me and stopped. He stood there breathing hard, shoulders hunched, arms hanging wrong at his sides, like he was waiting for something to happen. Mark walked toward me, calm. Ruth stood behind him with her hand over her mouth, eyes wide with fear that wasn't for me. "Now," Mark said quietly, "you made noise." A thud came from deeper in the house, heavy, fast. Another thud, closer. Then something large scraped across the floor, dragging weight instead of walking, enough to make my skin go cold. That was when I realized Eli wasn't the worst thing in the house. Mark dropped to one knee beside me and gripped my shirt at the collar, turning my head away from the hallway. "Eyes down," he said. "Do it if you want to live." I tried to lift my head anyway. He tightened his grip. My shoulder screamed. Something stepped into the end of the hallway. It was taller than Eli, wider. Its weight bowed the floor slightly beneath it. The way it held itself looked wrong, like joints stacked where they shouldn't be. Ruth moved between it and me without thinking. "Back," she said, shaking. "Back." The thing jerked and struck the wall hard enough to leave a dent in the plaster. The impact made my stomach heave. Mark dragged me backward across the floor, away from the line of sight. Wood tore at my skin. I bit down hard to keep the noise inside. Ruth kept speaking, forcing steadiness into her voice. "Breathe," she said. "Look at me." I caught her face for a second. Pale, wet-eyed, jaw locked. Mark shoved me into a small side room and slammed the door. The lock clicked from the outside. I stood shaking with my back against the wood and listened to sounds that didn't belong in a home. Wood cracking, a body hitting a wall, Ruth's voice and sharp commands she'd used before. Then it slowed. The thud stopped. The scraping faded. Breathing remained, heavy and wet, then gradually quieter. Mark opened the door a crack. His face appeared, pale, sweat on his forehead, calm forced into place. "You saw enough," he said. I swallowed and tasted blood. "If I tell anyone," I whispered, "they'll come." Mark nodded once. "And then that happens," he said. Ruth's voice came from down the hall, exhausted. "We can't do this again." Mark looked at me through the crack. "You live here now," he said, "or you die." He closed the door. The lock clicked. I slid down the wood and sat on the floor, wrists aching, shoulder burning, ears ringing. Outside, the world stayed ordinary. Cars passed, phones rang, people slept. Inside this house, the secret stayed contained. Silence kept strangers safe. Silence kept me alive.